right now on the Daily Debrief.
Were you involved in any way in a plot to kill Dan Markel?
No.
The ex-wife of a murdered law professor denies playing a role in his death. And
Mr. Jean was dead before that door ever opened.
Closing arguments in the killing of an unarmed African-American in his own apartment by an off-duty police officer who says she made a mistake. The defense says the state's murder case is a stretch.
Sexting and speculation.
The Daily Debrief brings you the day in court. It's Monday, September 30th.
Welcome to the Debrief, everyone. The jury has the case of the now fired Dallas police officer who killed a man in his own apartment thinking it was her own apartment. Amber Guyger took the stand earlier in this case and admitted she intended to kill the person inside whom she took for an intruder. Guyger was on the wrong floor of her complex, which fellow tenants described as confusing. The victim was her upstairs neighbor whose apartment was directly above hers. The victim in this case, 26-year-old Botham Jean, an accountant who was merely sitting inside eating ice cream. Despite defense witnesses who discussed the confusing nature of the multi-story complex, the prosecution says Geiger should have noticed the clues that she was in the wrong. Two attorneys and one judge are watching along with us tonight. Michelle Rayner-Goolsby is here along with Michael Bryant. Judge Ashley Wilcott is in Atlanta. During closing arguments, the state trash-talked the defendant's testimony.
I never want anybody to ever have to go through or even imagine going through what I felt that night. That was one of the very last things the defendant said when she was on the stand. Are you kidding me? That is garbage. Most of what she said was garbage. A bowl of ice cream that he was finally going to get to enjoy. But it wasn't long because the ice cream was still frozen. When all of a sudden, this defendant busts into his apartment. He's sitting on the couch and he acts like a normal, reasonable person. And he looks in the direction of the intruder into his home. She is an intruder into his home. And before he can even get up, he is shot dead in his own home.
The defense asked jurors to excuse Geiger's conduct as legally reasonable because she was faced with a perceived threat and had but seconds to react.
You get the tunnel vision. Your heart suddenly kicks in. Blood is rushing because suddenly you feel in danger. She walks up. She doesn't wait outside or anything. She's putting the fob in. It's going in. Right at that second, she sees the door that's ajar. She says, my God, someone's in my apartment, because she left it locked. And that door's opening up. She doesn't wait around at that point and decide to charge in. It's opening up all in one motion. This is all happening in 1 second or two. And she pulls that door open and the lights are off. And she's face to face there at the end of the apartment with a figure. And her heart is beating and she is scared. It's a reasonable mistake anyone could make. And her gun is pulled out and she points it at the figure. And she tells you what she said. Training kicks in this. Let me see your hands, let me see your hands. But he's moving around. That frightens her. He doesn't comply. In fact, he comes forward. He's walking. And he's saying, hey, hey, hey. All she's thinking in her mind is ignoring my gun. He must have something. He's coming to harm me. And she has to make that split-second decision. And this time it ended in tragedy.
The prosecution rebutted the defense's argument of self-defense by saying the killing of Botham Jean was not reasonable.
She got to get up here and talk to you. You know? Because of what she did. This is all I can bring in. Mr. Jean can't come into this courtroom and appeal to your sympathy or to your emotion. He's been reduced to a cardboard photograph. This is not one of those things where you could just say, whoops, too bad for you, buddy, you're buried 6 feet under, I'm going on about my life. No, I've never been more proud of a position I've ever taken. Killing this man was unnecessary and it was unreasonable. It was unreasonable from start to finish. She had options outside that door when she had no danger. Options that didn't involve any violence to anybody. She didn't want to use it because she wanted to engage him. And everything after that was just a mere formality.
Let's discuss this case with two of our experts to start tonight. Judge Ashley Wilcott, I have a big question for you here. Why is the judge allowing the jury to couple two possible defenses, the so-called castle doctrine self-defense in one's home with mistake of fact? Here's my issue with this. Amber Guyger wasn't in her own home. Shouldn't the castle doctrine apply to both of Jean basically getting up and coming at her? Why this coupling of these two strange defenses?
Well, certainly what you just said is one argument, Aaron. However, what the judge is, I can't tell you what the judge is thinking, but here's what I think the argument is to be made. Listen, she thought she was in her own home. She acted because she thought she was in her own home. Therefore, stand your ground, being able to act in self-defense applies because she believed herself to be in her own home.
Well, look, I mean, it's not quite stand your ground. And here's the thing with stand your ground, Judge Wilcott. As you well know, stand your ground means you can stand the ground you legally have the right to occupy. She was a trespasser in there.
But she thought it was hers. And so they're saying, listen, if you acted in self-defense and you thought it was your own home, we're going to let this doctrine apply.
Okay, so hypothetically, let's say hypothetically, if both of them, Jean, had survived, let's say he had a gun. So then he gets the castle doctrine if he survived for shooting her, and then she gets the castle doctrine for shooting him. I mean, it's just like legally this turns into a conundrum here. Michael Bryant, here's my fear with this, is this will eventually result in cases bust into any old place. Oh, I thought it was mine, the door was blue, my door is blue, castle doctrine, I can do that.
Well, the remedy is very simple. It has to be a reasonable mistake. It can't be anything you say. It can't be, well, yeah, I went in there and kind of changed my mind halfway through the door. You have to have the reasonable belief it is your home. That's a pretty good stopgap.
This is a big legal conundrum. The jury's still out in this case. Now, let's move along. Here is how Amber Guyger says the shooting happened. She says that she approached the apartment door, noticed it was cracked open, and put her key in the lock to go inside. She explains hearing someone inside and being scared.
I heard moving around inside my apartment.
What type of moving around?
Like loud shuffling, someone walking.
Okay. What happened when the key actually went into the keyhole?
It forced the door open.
What were you feeling with that door?
Fear, scared as crap.
Okay. As the door opened, did you see anything in your apartment?
Yes, I did. That's whenever, directly in the middle towards the window is when I saw the silhouette figure standing back there. I used my left arm to fully open it. And at that time, that's whenever I'm drawing my service weapon out. And I yelled at him. It's like, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. He started coming towards me.
How fast was he coming towards you?
At a fast-paced walk.
Wasn't running?
Wasn't running.
When you saw him coming towards you, what was going through your mind?
I thought that he was coming at me. Since I couldn't see his hands, he was going to kill me.
Did you hear anything as he was walking towards you?
There was a loud yell. He was yelling, hey, 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 in an aggressive voice. And that's at that point whenever I shot.
Somewhere in this area?
Yes.
When you shot, what happened?
He fell down.
On cross, prosecutors accused Geiger of abandoning her police training, which should have told her to seek cover. She knew someone was in the apartment she thought was hers.
Yes, there was someone in my apartment.
Right. And you knew that before this door had been fully open. You wanted to find the threat and fully open that door, and that's when you saw Mr. Jean.
No,
True?
sir. No, sir. It happened so quickly.
You said, I put the key in, and I hear moving around. As the door began to open, I wanted to find the threat. As the door was open fully, that's when you saw the silhouette.
Yes, sir.
But you're telling me at the most critical moment of the entire thing, your training just abandoned you.
No, sir.
No. Because your training says that when you're at this point here, for officer safety, to maximize your safety, do not go inside that apartment.
On a call.
Ma'am, your general orders indicate that you are on duty 24/7.
They do.
And you know that that training is designed for your safety, first and foremost.
Yes, sir.
And that's not only what your orders are, that's how you guys are trained.
Yes, sir.
So for your safety, you should have taken a position of cover and concealment and got help. And instead you decided to go in.
Yes, I did go in.
Prosecutors asked Geiger if she knew she was using deadly force when she fired her gun at Botham Jean.
Yes, it was a threat at the time.
Ma'am, will you answer my questions, please?
Yes, sir.
When you shot at Mr. Jean, you knew you were using deadly force against him.
Yes.
You know what a bullet can do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And when you shot at him twice, you intended to kill him.
Yes, sir.
All right. So all this stuff about it being a sad mistake, at the moment in time when rubber meets the road, when you pulled that trigger, you intended to kill Mr. Jean.
He was the threat. Yes, sir.
Will you answer my question? When you aimed and pulled the trigger at Mr. Jean, shooting him in center mass exactly where you are trained, you intended to kill Mr. Jean.
I did.
Court met on Saturday, and the sequestered jury heard but a few minutes of testimony about what an officer feels in a moment of stress.
Auditory exclusion, which basically means that you may not hear at the normal volume that you normally would because you're under stress. You may have vision narrowing or tunnel vision, which means you are only focusing on what is directly in front of you, not in your periphery. You may also experience short-term memory loss, which may be regained over time because your mind is prioritizing tasks at that moment in time. And the last one that you may experience is also a rapid heart rate, which may increase to a very elevated level due to the stress that you are experiencing mentally, physically, and psychologically.
The defense case consisted of former apartment complex residents who also said they had walked into the wrong units. Here's direct examination from the defense and cross-examination from the state.
Well, as I was continuing to walk, I got to maybe somewhere around here, just maybe barely past the island, and there was a woman sitting on a couch, and she kind of looked like a deer caught in headlights. She didn't say anything, she was silent, but she looked scared, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm in the wrong apartment.
Did you shoot her?
No.
She shoot you?
No.
Great cross-examination there. Another neighbor said she would catch people looking into her apartment and sometimes even parked on the wrong floor of the garage herself.
But I had someone looking into my apartment and I was worried about it, and I had to get in touch with the office and tell that tenant to stop because they would just stand there and like sometimes look in, and it was very like disturbing.
Now, you said you lived on the third floor. What floor of the parking garage would you park on?
Normally I would park on the third floor.
Did you ever unintentionally park on the fourth floor of the parking garage?
Yes.
About how many times would you say you did that?
I would say at least 1 or 2 times.
Michelle Rayner-Goolsby is of counsel to a law firm which represents the family of victim Botham Jean. Michelle, I wanted to bring you in at this point in the discussion to wrap up some bigger questions about the case. What does justice mean for the family? What does the family hope happens here?
I mean, obviously the family wants a guilty verdict. I think when you find yourself in these situations as family members, and I've had the, unfortunate but fortunate task of representing families in these types of cases, in high profile cases, their child isn't coming back, their family member isn't coming back, but there's some semblance of peace if that the jury can see things as they see things and bring a guilty verdict back.
My guess is the family is not buying this defense testimony.
No, and there's things that weren't disclosed to the jury, but one of the attorneys, Lee Merritt, he posted on Instagram that Miss Geiger, and it was verified that it was her account, would repost these things of, I kill first and ask questions later, those types of memes. And so their position is that she, kind of had this in her to kill, whether it's, Mr. John or whomever, to kill first and ask questions later. And the fact that some of her testimony has been contradicted. And she said on the stand, I think that's really important, that she intended to kill him. She intended to kill him.
Exactly. That was shocking because so many self-defense defendants, when they're on the stand, they just say, look, I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to stop the threat. That was a shock to those of us watching. Still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, the killing of a Florida law professor. The ex-wife of the victim takes the stand amid prosecution theories that the alleged killers had ties to her own family. That case when we return in a moment.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network.
His body just went boom.
She did it!
We've been covering 2 trials.
The only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel to gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From high-profile cases to the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect. Let me finish.
We cover the most interesting and important legal news going on across the country.
A verdict in the case of an Ohio woman who took the stand and admitted she shot and killed her military husband.
And our multi-platform brand is resonating. From syndication.
With more, we're joined by Law&Crime Network host Jesse Weber.
To our expert analysis.
With me now is Rachel Stockman, editor-in-chief for Law&Crime Network. This former head prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and host of Law&Crime Network, Bob Bianchi.
On Monday, the Law&Crime Network covering the trial live.
Let's get to the top legal stories of the day with Jesse Weber, attorney and anchor for the Law&Crime Network. So good morning, Jesse.
With dozens of places to watch, we already have tens of millions of minutes viewed per month. And our viewers and readers are engaged, with more than 30,000 comments per month on the site, a bustling chat room, and an average watch time of 30 minutes.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
This is Law&Crime.
We got a lot of fascinating cases, as we always do, gavel to gavel coverage.
In the fastest growing genre in America, we are uniquely positioned to dominate. This is Law&Crime.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Our son Arjun was born with cystic fibrosis. CF is a genetic disease that shortens lives. When the foundation was founded in 1955, children with CF rarely live long enough to attend kindergarten. Today, thanks to the foundation's groundbreaking research, advocacy, and care, some people with CF are attending college, getting married, and starting families. We've made amazing progress, but until a cure is found for all people with CF, we will not stop. Help us add tomorrows. Visit cff.org today.
Matthew.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Talk. They hear you.
A jury has recommended the death penalty for a man convicted of sexually assaulting and killing a 9-year-old girl. Felicia Williams disappeared in 2014. Her naked body later turned up on a causeway in Old Tampa Bay. Defendant Granville Ritchie learned his recommended sentence late Friday night after jurors heard graphic testimony about what the girl endured in her final hours. Now to the trial of an on-again, off-again Florida couple accused of murdering a law professor there. The victim in the case, Dan Markel, was in a nasty custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendy. Prosecutors point to this battle as a potential motive for Markel's death. Neither Wendy nor any of her family have been charged. The defendants are Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanoa. She blames him. He says he didn't do it. Last week, an investigator described the combative divorce proceedings and that ex-wife Wendy Markel would have gained some $2 million from her husband's life insurance policy.
Was concerning inappropriate interaction by his mother-in-law. That would be Wendy Adelson's mother, Donna Adelson. Because his children had told him, repeating what Donna Adelson had stated about Dan Markel. Grandma hates you, Grandma thinks you're stupid.
And did you review some emails between Wendy Adelson and Donna Adelson?
I did.
All right, and did that further interest you regarding potential motives for this case?
Yes, she suggested threatening Dan Markel with the children going to a Christian church, specifically at one time a Catholic church, even though he was devout Jewish. She also suggested at one point a bribe of $1 million split up between Wendy, Donna and her husband Harvey, and their son, which is Wendy's older brother Charlie.
The ex-wife took the stand as well and testified with immunity. She said she and the victim separated in the fall of 2012 and that she later moved to South Florida with their kids. She said part of why they separated was because of those different religious beliefs.
I think most divorces aren't very pleasant.
Okay, but this one was like really unpleasant, right?
I found getting divorced to be unpleasant, yes.
And in the litigation that ensued between the two of you, you guys argued over things as small as a tennis racket, I noticed in one pleading.
I don't remember that.
Did he threaten to press kidnapping charges against you?
I don't remember that. No.
Did he threaten to go after your law license? Remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Do you remember him saying you failed to disclose a bunch of assets in the divorce process?
I do remember that.
Do you recall whether he was complaining about you refusing to communicate with him about right of first refusal to the children during your time with them?
I know he was frustrated about the Skyping.
Lack of communication via Skype.
It's hard to Skype with two toddlers, yes.
The ex-wife's immunity deal prevents prosecutors from using her words on the stand against her. However, it does not stop the state from seeking charges in general against her, assuming they have other evidence. Prosecutors asked her if she or her brother Charlie were involved in her former husband's death.
I know that he does implant surgery.
Do you know anything about whether he offers discounts for cash or does a lot of business in cash?
I have no idea.
Do you know if there's a safe in your parents' house that has stacks of cash inside?
I don't know about a safe with stacks of cash.
So you don't have a stack of cash in your parents' safe that's Wendy's stack?
No.
Did he mention hiring a hitman to kill your husband?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
No.
Did he ever joke about he looked into hiring a hitman, but buying you a TV as a divorce present would be cheaper?
He did make that joke. He tended to repeat himself, and sometimes he would make jokes that weren't very funny about all kinds of things.
Did he buy you a TV as a divorce present?
He did.
And was that TV the same TV that was being repaired at your residence at the time that your husband was murdered?
It was.
Did Charlie ever say that he considered all possible options to take care of the problem being Dan Markel?
No.
Were you involved in any way in a plot to kill Dan Markel?
No.
Do you have any knowledge other than the statements you said your brother made or the jokes your brother made? Do you have any knowledge of anyone being involved in a plot to kill your husband?
No.
Now back to our guest, Michelle Rayner-Goolsby. This is really complicated to keep track of, and the prosecutor finally got that chart up there with the pictures to try to help the jury make sense of all these characters.
Yes. And I actually was looking at that chart to try to, make sure to see how these people are connected. It is a very confusing case, and that is a concern for, I think, if I'm a prosecutor, for the jury, is the jury going to be able to follow what's going on? Are they going to be able to follow the cast of characters? Are they going to be able to follow who has the interest and why they have the interest and who did what and how does Ms. Adelson come in. So, I mean, it is a very intriguing case. A fun fact is that many of my colleagues were actually taught by Mr. Markel. So he was a beloved professor at Florida State.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my thought, if I'm the defense here, Judge Wilcott, we have about 30 seconds left, is look, so the family might not like the victim. How does that get to these two defendants?
Right. It doesn't matter who the family likes and doesn't like. I think the chart is key in showing the relationship between all of them, but this is a convoluted set of facts for this jury to have to decipher.
Michael Bryant, a lot more to come, presumably, if they're going to tie this up.
Yeah, but I don't know how the jury gets to the defendants without getting the family involved. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to see. Are we going to get more testimony from family members? Exactly how are they going to tie this together? We've got the wiretaps coming. That's the big stuff. That's a lot of the answer. Thanks a lot to the panel. The debrief wrapping up tonight. We are keeping an eye on the court in Texas for a potential verdict in Geiger. We'll see you later.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. The internet can be a complicated place for many different reasons, but one of the questions that seems to always confuse people is, can I use a photo or image that I find online? Let's discuss. Okay, so first, copyrights. Copyrights are all the exclusive rights that someone has in an original work that he or she created, including images. How they're distributed, seen, copied, and otherwise used is up to the copyright owner. Generally, if you created the image, you automatically own the copyright in it. Pretty cool, right? What this means is that you usually need the permission of the copyright owner before using the image. However, ask yourself the following. Are you planning to use the image sparingly, or maybe only a portion of it? Are you not going to make money off of it? Are you using it in a news reporting, educational, or scholarly context that benefits the public? Are you completely changing the image so it's unrecognizable? Are you transforming the meaning of the image, like using it in a parody? Is it impossible to get the permission of the copyright owner? Well, if your answer is yes to some or all of these questions, then you may be able to use it without permission, but that's not always guaranteed. Also, sometimes images no longer are copyright protected, meaning they're in the public domain. Or the owner grants something called a Creative Commons license, allowing others to freely use the image in specific ways. There are websites that offer royalty-free stock images as well. You should look into all that too. Copyrights aside, if the image features a logo or slogan, or a person, particularly a celebrity, then other issues could come into play as well, including trademark, privacy, and right of publicity laws. I told you, complicated. So best practice is to get permission or give credit whenever you can before using an image, particularly on social media. For more legal news you can use, go to Law&Crime.com.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care.
The Lisa Colagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.